July 14th, 2000, Bill Clinton was in his final year of the United States presidency. Gas was approximately $1.50. The number one song was by some band called Vertical Horizon called Everything You Want. And the two towers in New York City still stood. That was when the original superhero phenomenon that was the X-Men launched into theaters on a measly $75 million box budget, and it made $296.3 million at the box office. That was where we stood when that movie came out. Now, the superhero genre has become the number one genre in all of cinema. And the question is, does that movie hold up today? We all just rewatched it. Jason, kick us off. How do you feel about the 2000 X-Men movie, and does it still hold up?
Quick answer. I feel very good about that movie. I enjoy it, and I feel like it does hold up. Absolutely. X-Men movies and X-Men comics have been held dear to my heart for much of my childhood and actually into my adulthood as the comic books behind me keep getting larger and larger in my collection of my monthly X-Men subscription. But I was actually a little nervous going back and watching this movie that I hadn't seen in a while. I'm like, oh shit, does it hold up still? And yeah, I enjoyed it actually. Yeah, but it is definitely a product of that time. You know, you feel the 90s, you feel the 2000s, that version of the X-Men. And yeah, I loved it, and I'd rewatch it again. I think it does deserve a rewatch every like a handful of years. And yeah, it's one of my tops of all time.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, yeah, it does hold up. I suppose it depends on what your definition of hold up is. Because there's some things that don't hold up in the movie. But overall, when I go back and rewatch it, I do like it. I like a lot about it. And yeah, I recently rewatched this movie anyway, so this is a recent rewatch. But yeah, I think for the most part, it's definitely a good initial Marvel movie, considering it's basically the first Marvel movie. I think it's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed watching X-Men again. There's a lot to like about it. Yeah, not everything the movie does still works. For me, it's always easy because CGI is never, ever going to age well in any movie that has been released up to this point. Eventually, your CGI is going to look terrible. So I always try to focus on creative uses of CGI, which I think this movie has a lot going for it, where it's not just where we are today, especially with the latest Ant-Man movie, where CGI is just used as an overindulgence, and it's just kind of used as a fix-all for everything. This movie has a lot of very creative uses of CGI, everything from Wolverine's claws. I mean, the introductory scene with Wolverine where his claws shoot out against the guy that's trying to get in a fight with him. In the middle claw, you see the skin pull apart, like things like that are very cool and very nuanced of the time, but I still think are very cool effects. I really enjoyed this movie. I think the cast is near pitch perfect. The one person that the negative thing I'll say is about this movie really is Anna Paquin. Anna Paquin has no business being one of the most charismatic and sexy characters in all of media, which is Rogue. And they take her, the writers, and also her performance, not only in this movie, but in the subsequent two movies, is just very milquetoast, very emo, just depressed chick. And it's very unfortunate because I feel like that's a big miss, but everything else in the movie kind of, to me, works pretty well.
Yeah, that was the one glaring, negative that I had on my list too, was Anna Paquin. Yeah, she is, I mean, there were a couple moments there. It almost turns you off from the movie, her shitty acting, and okay, what is her age, the actress's age in that movie too? And
when the movie, I don't know what her age was when the movie came out. She's supposed to be a high schooler.
Yeah, and then her I don't know, relationship. I wouldn't say that, but the trying with Wolverine, which is obviously a 100-year-old grown man at this point, Logan as a character. And then this weird sort of the flirtiness that she has. And they even bring it up towards the end of the movie of like, she's into you, kind of thing. And they still have this like little kind of last scene. But yeah, for you nailed it. That Rogue is supposed to be this, very charismatic, beautiful, like Southern belle, like a very different, superhero that we've seen in the past, and they did not do that character justice. And it's crazy how well they casted so many other characters. And I mean, Xavier being Patrick Stewart, I think they wrote the whole movie around him being that actor. Like when that guy was writing it, I've heard it's like all I pictured was Patrick Stewart the entire time. And I think even Patrick Stewart has been quoted as, I pictured myself as Professor Xavier the entire time that I ever was growing up or read this character and things like that. But you're absolutely right. Anna Paquin almost sinks this movie, but I think it's the stellar performance of the rest of the cast around her is able to like overshadow it.
I think we're all in agreement that Anna Paquin is the worst part of this movie. I love the character of Rogue so much. X-Men has the best pound for pound female characters of any Marvel group.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, between Jean Grey, Storm, and Rogue, it's goated. Those three are they're all so distinct and different from each other, but they're all so memorable. They have awesome set of powers, really cool personalities. They're all very different and different problems with each character that are kind of unique to themselves. And so it really sucks that they just did such a nosedive on Rogue's character for this movie and this whole series. I looked it up. She's 40 years old now. So she was 17 about the time they were recording that. So her character seems to be that age. She's a high schooler and she's sneaking into Logan's room in the middle of the night.
Yes.
And it's like, you kind of just assume it's because he's having nightmares, but it's not said explicitly.
Yeah, and how close is she sleeping to him to hear his murmuring nightmares? It has to be like in the same room versus like down the hall.
So an underage person is sneaking into a room with an adult. It's almost as if this is a Bryan Singer movie.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yikes.
I'll just, Bryan Singer's allegations against him are awful. Which is the only thing I'll say about that. But that being said, the guy happens to have directed X-Men, X-Men 2, and X-Men Days of Future Past, which I believe are the three best of the X-Men movies. But yeah, not the greatest allegations against that guy.
Yeah, I know it's the whole Bill Cosby thing. And it's Rick and Morty. I constantly want to watch Rick and Morty, and Mimi's just like, no, do you know about the allegations against him? I'm like, can I just enjoy a show that without having all the PC stuff attached to it? But yeah, you're so right, though.
But okay, so Rogue aside, the casting of this movie is phenomenal. I mean, Hugh Jackman obviously speaks for himself.
Let me butt in real quick on that one. I heard it was Russell Crowe that was originally casted for Wolverine, and he had some other obligation, and he recommended Hugh Jackman, and that's how we got to that point.
Thanks, Russ.
Yeah, it is funny because I mean, you go back to 2000, same year that Gladiator came out, and Russell Crowe is such a man. That was like he was just peak man, just very stoic and awesome. And I could see how Russell Crowe would have been a great Wolverine. He would not have aged like Hugh Jackman has aged since then, because I think like I don't want to be disrespectful. I won't say it. I don't want to be disrespectful to Russell Crowe because I love Russell Crowe, but he's enjoyed the fruits of his labor. Let's just put it that way. But yeah,
he would have ended up looking like Puck. You know, Puck from Alpha, the Canadian. What's the
X-Force?
No, Alpha. I thought it was just Alpha.
Is it just
Canadian
Alpha?
X-Men. Yeah, Alpha Force.
The Alpha is the Canadian mutant team, and Puck, I believe, is one of them.
Yeah,
He's like really kind of short, like he's even shorter than Wolverine, and like kind of fat. And that's basically what Russell Crowe would have slowly morphed into.
Alpha Flight.
Alpha Flight. That's what it is.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Russell Crowe would have ended up looking like Puck from Alpha Flight.
Or have you seen pictures of Jack Black recently? That's what I picture Russell Crowe is like now. I mean, Jack Black has this huge beard and big old belly and stuff like that's Russell Crowe, sitting on a good day.
Yeah, but you're right. So the big departure from Wolverine of the comics. Wolverine of the comics is 5'3", and he's this whirling dervish, Tasmanian devil type of character. You are our shining beacon of positivity, Jason. But back then, I believe you've talked about how you were much more critical of when character adaptations did not match their comic persona.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How did you interpret Hugh Jackman, who is 6'2", playing Wolverine at the time, versus how do you feel about that now?
And I'm trying to think of, because Remy, you just said that was like the first Marvel movie, but I want to say we had like a string of bad ones before this. We probably had like Ghost Rider and Daredevil.
No, those are all after, like Daredevil and Ghost Rider, 2004 and 5, I believe.
So we didn't have any other little Marvel movies before this.
I mean, you can go back to like the early 90s when they did the Captain America movie. And
the very bad.
There's the lost film of the Fantastic Four movie. Right.
Yes,
they filmed most of it, but it just never saw the light of day. And the clips that you can see of it are so bad.
Oh, this costume that Thing wears in that one is is epic. Okay, so this was the first one. So, like I said, I was very much into the comics as a kid, and then even the animated cartoon was 94, I think, early
91.
91. Okay, wow. Of course, watching a lot of the animated cartoon, it being a little bit closer to the 90s versions, the Jim Lee kind of versions of the X-Men. So you're thinking that they're going to kind of portray those onto the screen. And now that you bring this up, I do remember walking out of that film being like, that's not how that character was supposed to be, or they didn't look right, or his costume wasn't right. And there were many movies that I came out of X-Men's being like, this little small detail they didn't get perfectly right, And then I had to sit there and be like, okay, hold on. I'm going to hate every one of these movies that ever comes out because it's going to be someone else's interpretation of this character. And so once that started to sink in a little bit more, I appreciated it. But especially with the longevity of Hugh Jackman playing this character, all the way up until like Logan, the last one, you absolutely love him as the Wolverine actor. And yes, I don't think I had the exact feelings in the first movie or the first couple of watches. But of course, in hindsight, you're like, oh, best Wolverine actor ever. But you're right, so far away from what the comic books had him as this scrappy, cigar smoking, little guy that got thrown around by Colossus as a super move of Cannonball, or
the fastball special.
Fastball special, yes, yeah. And I don't see Colossus throwing Hugh Jackman anytime soon, So
he does throw him in the third movie, in the opening. In the last stand, in the danger room, they do the fastball special to take off the head of a Sentinel.
Okay, yes, I do remember that. But I guess it took a while for them to kind of do some of those more comic booky kind of versions of him. But I of course, hindsight, love him. But at the moment, I think it was a little hard of a pill to swallow. But yeah, does a fantastic job to this day with that actor.
Yeah, I think. Casting wise, it is pretty freaking stellar, top to bottom. Halle Berry she really grows into the role over the course of the next few movies, especially. But she's very background character, underplayed in this movie. And they just, along with Rogue / Anna Paquin's terrible performance, I don't put it on Halle Berry entirely, but her in and out of a very light African accent is like, just, they're super non-committal. And then it's like by the end of the movie, she doesn't have it at all. So that just kind of sucked, because I think her character deserves I personally would like for Rogue, or Storm rather, to have a full blown African accent. Like, this is a queen from Africa, essentially. That is the way that I would like her to be portrayed, me personally. I accept an American version of her because I really like Halle Berry, and by the end of the series, I really have grown to appreciate her performance. So, but then everybody else, I was gonna say, I think everybody else just nails their role so well. James Marsden is such a perfect douchey Cyclops. And the triangle between him and Hugh and Famke is so good. Hey, Logan, stay away from my girl or whatever he
Yeah.
says.
This is the part where you tell me to stay away from your girl. Yeah, I'd say that if I was worried about her. So then at the very end, he says it. I'm like, dude, come on. You're
It's such a perfect like Cyclops rendition.
Yeah.
And so he never gives any, yeah. So I think I do. I just, yeah. And that's not even, we haven't even mentioned Ian McKellen's name, but
Woof.
oh my
goodness.
God, so good as Magneto. And just this coming on the back end of us just reviewing Guardians 3 and how overly angry the High Evolutionary is at all times, just screaming and yelling. There's only like one scene in the whole movie where Ian McKellen starts to lose his cool and he immediately brings it back down. Like he gets, I forget exactly what scene it is where he gets a little bit angry. But then immediately like calms himself down.
When his powers are getting transferred to Rogue, that weird face he's doing behind the spinning thing. Is that what you're talking about?
No,
like
there's a scene where he actually gets angry with somebody.
Well, he gets angry with Sabretooth.
I think that's what
he locks him up, but he's just angry. He doesn't yell. He just, you see it in his face and he turns around and he
closes the bars.
Yeah, closes the bars. Or like the opening scene or the introductory scene with him as an older man when he says,
"We are the future, Charles, not them. They no longer matter."
Yeah, very in control. Like that is the beautiful part of Magneto and the way they portray him is he's always very much confident and in control, and he does not act immature. He's very calculated. He's very smart, and the him opposed to Professor X is very like quiet and very monotone in his delivery. Patrick Stewart as Professor X. It is hard to see someone else as him because James McAvoy is a great actor and everything, but I've never looked at James McAvoy being like, that's Professor X. Like you just look at Patrick Stewart and you're like, that's Professor X. It was a role that was made for him.
Mm-hmm. A big part I think of like how much we love these characters is not so much what they are, but how they play off of each other. Of course, Ian and Patrick. I don't know if they're besties at this point as far as like off screen, but I know they've now become besties as far as like those two actors and like how well they play off of each other. Because there's. The X-Men and the X-Men universe it's big as far as like these big overarching stories and the Phoenix Saga and these things happen, but it's also so much about the characters in the team and then the bad guys and things of the relationships they have, like the Charles and Eric relationship in the comics and in the movie is so good. It's so good that it's a bad guy and a good guy that can still see each other where they're coming from and be able to talk on an equal plane, play chess at the very end of the movie when you're in jail that you're going to go visit, the guy who you just put there. So they portrayed that so freaking well of the friendship, camaraderie between these two, the respect. But then also I have my own ideals, you have yours, and we're going to, probably meet each other again on the battlefield, but I respect the hell out of you. It's like it's so well done. And I kind of forgot how much I just enjoy those two characters on screen, just chatting, And also the love triangle that you brought up, though. I think that's like the big part of this movie. And that was a big part in X-Men in general. It's the Rogue or the Jean Grey, Cyclops, Wolverine love triangle, and I think they do it so well in this, where you see kind of her even teeter a little bit on that last scene when he's on the bed, and or the operating table, whatever, and she's pulling away some of the Band-Aids and stuff, and everything's healed underneath, and he says something, you're just trying to get my shirt off again. I don't know if it's that scene or another, but you can see in her mind that she is toying with the idea of, oh, okay, I can see myself with Wolverine, but got my douchey boyfriend back here that I gotta respect still, but just that actress, does such a good job of, being
Famke Janssen.
Yeah, and does that throughout a lot of the movies, and even more towards the Logan movies, where you can see that they did kind of develop much more relationship. But it's so good that just the interplay between the characters, those three, and then those two in that movie, just sell it.
Yeah, this movie runs at a brisk hour 45.
Yeah,
a great, superb runtime for a movie where it just goes and it's over. But everything this movie does, X2 does better on every level. And that movie is 2 hours and 15 minutes. And that extra 30 minutes really helps flush out the other characters. So that's why this movie's great within itself, in spite of its flaws. But the setting of the table, I think this movie does very well, and until X2 comes out and just makes everything way better. And flushes some of the.
Oh, sorry. I mean, just the runtime thing, is you were so right. It's an hour and 45. It's fast. And you know why? There is no origin stories for a single character. I mean, we get Magneto a little bit, that when him and the kid pulling the fence at the beginning, but they don't tell us about anyone. They don't tell us about anyone's powers. They don't have any backstory. We just go into this flying, and I thought that was so respectful of the audience, where it's like, these characters have been around for a long time. We've got a story to tell. We have so many characters we're introducing in this movie. We're not going to do origins. We're just going to run right into it, where there's someone where they don't explain the powers very well, and I was thrown off by it. Oh, Toad. I felt like Toad's powers weren't explained well, that we almost needed an origin for him a little bit more. But I feel like everyone else, you're like, okay, Cyclops, I can figure out what you're doing. And the little bit of like telekinesis versus, going into someone's mind and moving things, they talk about a little bit. But yeah, that's the runtime beauty of this, is let's get into the action.
Yeah, I know. I think the pacing of this movie is so beautiful. It's so good. Just especially, again, coming off of Guardians 3. It's just like, wow, like they did all of this in an hour 45 is incredible. It's very interesting because it's an ensemble cast, and it's interesting because I'm curious how much of this movie was edited down. I mean, an hour 45 at the time is the standard operating procedure for a movie, right? We didn't get to the 2+ hour standard until more recently. So I'm curious how much they edited out, and because it's like Logan and Rogue are the two main characters, but only barely. And I don't even know if it's maybe a little hindsight 2020 and just being like, oh yeah, Logan is the premier character in X-Men through all the films. I don't know if it's just me looking back and being like, oh yeah, of course, but it doesn't say like Rogue is kind of the centerpiece, as far as being like, we get introduced to her early, and then it's like she is the character that Magneto's chasing, whether you know it or not. And so, but yeah, the tempo of this movie is great, and they do such a good job of giving everyone except for Storm like a little bit of time to shine. I think Bobby might even have more lines than Rogue than Storm, actually. But,
good point.
But yeah, I think, I was gonna say, as far as the cast goes, it is, I mean, or the tempo of the movie rather, I think it's pretty untouchable. No wasted time. And the funny thing that I was thinking about when I was watching this movie was, the best parts of this movie are all when they're not fighting. Like the actual fight scenes, the train fight isn't bad. That has some really good parts, especially with the showdown with the guns. But that is really cool. When Magneto is drilling the bullet,
are just pointing at the cops'
and
heads.
He's drilling the bullet slowly into
the
guy's head. I mean, there's some really nice.
I mean, that's one of the great lines. This movie has some great lines, and that's one of the, "You Homo sapiens and your guns." It's just a brilliant line.
Does he ever refer to themselves as Homo superiors in any of the movies?
I don't believe so.
Oh, that's a great line that he uses in comics and in video games, where he refers to them as the Homo superiors, which I just love. I love that phrase.
You consider yourself a Homo superior, Remy?
Absolutely, I do. One of us. So as a Homo superior, I just thought, and so, but yeah, so I think there's the fight scenes are the part of the movie that aged the worst, because all of them are just cables, like when you can just tell it's a person being pulled straight across or straight up on a cable, and they're just, it looks so bad.
Storm scene where Toad's tongue is wrapped around that, and like, what happens to Toad?
The worst line.
That was really bad.
Same thing that happens to everyone, and the lightning bolt doesn't even hit him. It hits the bar that he's attached to, and then it goes up there. It's like, you missed him after all that long.
But yeah, I think the fight scenes are the best fight scene is just Logan's cage fight. Logan's cage fight in the beginning is the best actual combat scene of the whole movie, I think. when he is. I love the effect when he punches the dude's hand and you hear the metal. It's like
Yeah.
and he like
And then the
yeah, the
headbutt.
headbutt.
Yeah.
It's like all those little details, which they don't even stick that for the rest of the movie, really. It's just that first scene, but it's a really cool detail.
All right, that move that he does, I don't know if you could even pull it off, Remy, where he's got the blades on one guy and then he's slicing the gun from behind. And this is Hugh Jackman like dance move where he's like doing this thing where you almost can see the future dancing in Hugh Jackman and that one little pose that he's doing as Wolverine. I'm like, I don't think I could pull that off.
Yeah, the story of the movie is the only original story we get from a X-Men movie that's not based on the comics. Where basically the story is that Magneto somehow knows of Rogue's power, and he sends Sabretooth to kidnap her and to bring her back, which would have felt like especially Magneto, would have felt like more of a honey versus vinegar moment, where it's like if Magneto just went to her and said, "Hey, I can take you in and make you, and like help," but no, he sends the scary Sabretooth to go take her and bring her back, because he's going to end up using her to try to turn all of these world leaders into mutants. And that's kind of just the basic story of the movie. What I love about this movie is the world building. I think is the strongest aspect next to the cast of the X-Men movies, which is you immediately are introduced to Magneto with this very grounded, real feeling Nazi prison camp for Jews. And you just see, the kid separated from his parents and his powers act. So you get this very what if powers existed in real world scenario. And then you cut to Jean Grey testifying in front of Congress, and Senator Kelly is a great, just asshole, just a bigot of a senator. And so you immediately, it just feels very real. And there's obviously very much connections and allegory to minorities and LGBTQ people and all of those things that are all themes within the movie that perfectly translate to real life. And it's one of the things about the movie that I love the most.
I think that's why we got the only origin story was Magneto's, because they wanted to make that Holocaust comparison to like what's the eventualness of the path that they're going down for the politics of this will be concentration camps. This is exactly what happened in the 40s that we're going to do to the mutants here now. So I think there's at least 4 or 5 other times where you get the very like close comparison to that. But in my notes, man, that was the weakest part of the movie, was the actual story. Only because the story is fine, but would Magneto actually do something like that? The character of Magneto, first off, making some machine that he is powering to change mutant powers, but then he's going to make a girl do it instead of him. It's like all of those things are so different from what the Magneto philosophy is in the comics of what he wants to do with the world and things like that. So it was kind of weak. It was good as far as storytelling elements and showing powers, and you're so right. One of my notes is how well they set up the political scene of it with such limited time of showing you what the landscape is as far as in the news and people on the streets of talking about this, the mutants and, and the fear that they have of these people. And we don't know what their powers are. They don't know what it could do to us. That phone call that he has with like some NRA guy on the helicopter. He's like, there's no difference between a mutant and a gun in school. It's like comparing that or a bomb or a grenade. He's able to make that argument and sell people on it that, yeah, these kids are just like guns in our school, so, yeah, it's the story, and that I just said earlier, where Ian McKellen is like on the machine, like dying. His face is like croaking out or something like that. That's probably one of the worst scenes in the movie to me. It's like how they portrayed that whole machine, but that's the 90s CG budget, I feel like, at that time too. But you also brought up Sabretooth, which I feel like was probably one of the weakest characters.
Yeah.
And the origin too. Like Wolverine pops up in front of Sabretooth, like, I don't know who you are. You don't know who I am. Like they're like, everyone who's watching was like, you two know each other. How are you acting like you don't know each other in this movie? Is it something like, I don't know if they revisit that later or how they do a twist on it in X2 or 3 or, but.
Well, it's X-Men Origins Wolverine that retcons and makes them brothers, and then it gets separated. And there's that Liev Schreiber plays Sabretooth, where Tyler Mane plays Sabretooth in this movie.
Yeah.
Which really,
sorry, go ahead.
He didn't really, like, Tyler Mane doesn't really do it. Like, he's this, and then he's also Michael Myers in the Rob Zombie. So he has the physical frame of Sabretooth, but he really is the most cartoonish, where he doesn't really have any lines or anything. They just give him this ridiculous, which again, it's we're going back to a time where it's like, how close to reality do you cast, or do you make the X-Men look like? There's the line of, what do you expect us to wear? Yellow spandex. So they went for the 2000s Matrix look with the leather suits that don't age very well. But like Sabretooth is like, they very much went towards a comic accurate Sabretooth. And it's like, all right, well, he doesn't fit in necessarily as a grounded Magneto or a Professor X, for example.
It is unfortunate that they just so I guess Rogue and Sabretooth would be the number two characters that, like, pound for pound they skimp on the most in the movie. He's just kind of like, he's pretty uninteresting, and just again doesn't age well, looks a little corny, looks cornier than some of the others. But I appreciate that they at least tried. Liev Schreiber doesn't have anything other than like these little tiny fangs and claws.
Tyler Mane.
Oh yeah.
No. Liev Schreiber.
Or you're talking about X-Men Origins?
Yeah, X-Men Origins. Liev Schreiber doesn't look anything like Sabretooth.
Right.
They're just like, nope, you're just gonna be a regular guy with little fangs and little claws or long nails. So I appreciate that they tried to take him that way. But so it's unfortunate, but it's fun. Yeah. So we have still yet to get a good Sabretooth, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, adaptation. Performance adaptation. So I would definitely like to see, like some film knock that out, but because Disney is now in control of the X-Men, it'll suck forever. So there's no doubt, there's no way that's going to happen.
But it was almost like we were just talking about off screen. It's like how hard Beast is to really portray onto the screen. It's like Sabretooth almost falls in that same category of, you almost need him to look so animalistic, but then that turns into just some CG character on screen. It's like, okay, how do we more, humanize it in a real actor kind of scenario?
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they portray, even though with the exception of Spider-Man No Way Home, every Sony superhero film sucks until proven otherwise. So on that note, I'm interested to see how they portray Kraven, because Kraven is similar to Sabretooth in their animalistic character. But Sabretooth's like, if you're looking on a spectrum of like man to animal, Sabretooth is closer to animal than man. And without going on too much of a tangent, I just think I would like to see a Sabretooth that is more animalistic. Because I mean, the kid, his character is supposed to be somebody that's like chained up in his parents' basement and like fed like a dog. Like, he has a really dark backstory that they don't flesh out, obviously. But overall, I think I would say he's number 2 as far as weakest character in the film, next to Rogue.
The music in this movie is not the iconic X2 soundtrack that basically becomes the theme. John Ottman does the music in this movie, and I was just looking. Apparently, he does X2 music. For some reason, I was thinking someone else did the X2 music, but according to the internet, it says that John Ottman also did X2, and that becomes the intro, the flying camera through CGI rendered images. That is the kind of the intro of all the X-Men movies. Starts in this, but we kind of get music that's just kind of there. We don't get that iconic X2, very, very much one of the great soundtracks of all time. John Powell does X3, which is unfortunate because X-Men 3 has the best soundtrack of any bad movie I've ever watched in my life. And it's really unfortunate that no one remembers that music because it's so damn good in a terrible movie.
No, it's so funny you bring up music. I mean, nothing caught my ear
Yeah.
rewatching it yesterday. And then I don't think about any iconic songs with X-Men. Even the intro right now that you're talking about, it's not, I can't hear in my head. I mean, the only X-Men song,
Ba-da-da-ba. You don't.
the cartoon, da-na-na-na-na,
Yes, there's
that
that.
one is what I hear when it's like, and the fact that in Doctor Strange, when X-Men or Professor X comes out, that little like the they do that because that is so much more iconic. I feel like to the X-Men than I think the song that you're referring to in X2.
More iconic, yes, but I mean, especially because the music, like I said, in X3, it's a completely different soundtrack. But when they come back with not First Class has its own soundtrack, I believe. But when they come back in Days of Future Past and the intro happens and the music kicks in, dude, full goosebumps. Like,
Oh yeah,
I can't believe that you aren't perfectly identifying the music because you know the music.
Yeah.
Yes, it's. I mean, X-Men. The theme of the X2, especially once we watch X2 and you watch the intro and that music kicks in, I think it'll register because it's so beautifully iconic. But yeah, in this movie, the music's kind of a nothing burger.
Yeah. 100.
when I was what?
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. No,
I was just gonna say, yeah, no, I literally same as Jason did not register. I didn't think about the music once because this is like completely irrelevant part of the movie to me.
And to hit again after Guardians, where it's such a relevant theme, music and things like that, and even in some movies now, But the entire time I'm watching X1, I'm like, I can't wait to watch X2. Is like that's what I felt like watching the first X1. I'm like, this is setting up so much because X2. I mean, I might even put it. Yeah, say it. Am I going to say it? I think I will. The best superhero movie, yeah, X2. It might. I mean, us just talking about Avengers, Endgame and Infinity War and loving that, but X2. I mean, just for what it was, and I still the Nightcrawler scene in the beginning. But it was funny though when I was watching the X1 when I started at the Magneto scene, I thought I was watching the wrong movie because how similar is the intro to this one is First Class, isn't it? The Magneto origin at the Holocaust camp, getting pulled away. But then I was waiting for Kevin Bacon and the coin scene to happen. I was like, okay, I am watching the right movie, So so many of these X-Men's, blur together, but I think that this one set up such a great foundation for everything else to be built on, though. I was good. The poison that they put into Cerebro, I felt like that was so lame, and they didn't talk about what it was or what it did.
Very just kind of, we needed a plot device to prevent.
Oh, we didn't talk about Mystique.
Oh, we didn't talk about
Mystique.
Okay,
I didn't want to talk about Mystique and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, Mystique. We have not talked about Mystique yet.
Yeah, dude, Mystique. Oh my God, so much better.
Lordy.
Than Jennifer Lawrence.
So much better. Like, okay, yeah, no, go ahead. I want to hear this.
So much better because she's way more true to the character. Not only is she hotter and sexier than Jennifer Lawrence, and this is Jennifer Lawrence. I say that post Jennifer Lawrence nudes being leaked. Okay, I have never seen them, but I hear they're very interesting to look at, and I think that she does such a good job as Mystique and playing like the bit of seductive, sexy, like in between her fighting. But and I'm sure we'll all agree, what's great about her and the Mystique character is that she is not embarrassed or ashamed about being a mutant at all. And that's why she wears her blue skin as much as she can. The only time she's not wearing her blue skin is when she actually has a job to do and she's impersonating somebody. But as soon as that job's over, right on back to blue. Like that is the way it should be, as opposed to Jennifer Lawrence, who constantly was just in her normal white skin. Just living in her white privilege for the entirety of all those movies that she's in. But no, Mystique, fantastic job, fantastic part of this movie. I like they don't really allude to her and Magneto necessarily being together or anything, other than this one scene where she's kind of hanging on his shoulder. She's just kind of there. It's just kind of funny, but that's like it. They don't really ever reference, but it's one of those things that you always think about. Like, are they fucking?
My only complaint, you're so right. I feel like she is much hotter, Rebecca Romijn, and the blue suit thing looks so good on her, and the character, how agile she is, and she holds up with Wolverine in a fight. But that's fight scene with Wolverine. That's another. We didn't get an origin, so we really didn't get an explanation of her powers. Where when she takes on Wolverine's presence, does she have his abilities? It's like when his claws come out, she just cuts them off. Like, what was that? Was that her skin that he just like chopped off right there? Like, there's a little things about Mystique that they don't quite in details. I don't even think they've kind of gotten to that in the comic books as much. But my only complaint is Jennifer Lawrence as a actress is very good, and she brought a lot of the character, what Mystique was and the battling and stuff. And we don't get any of that. She's really just a side character, just another one of Magneto's henchmen. And that's okay. In a huge movie where we had a ton of origins and a ton of characters we had to explain, I know some fall to the side, but I like Mystique as a character, and I just wish she would have been fleshed out a little bit more in there. But yeah, she definitely served a good purpose. And I remember the after credit kind of scene where you think she's dead on the ground, but it's really, she's now taken on a cop, and stabbed. This one's still alive. So, I like that she's that clever, that she can get out of situations and things like that. But yeah, one of the top characters in the movie, in my opinion, too. Mm-hmm.
I mentioned yesterday when we briefly talked about that this movie easily is one of the most bonkable movies because the beautifulness, the beauty of these actors. Rebecca Romaine, formerly Stamos. Jesus Christ. Famke Janssen, Hugh Jackman, James Marsden,
Halle Berry.
Halle Berry's though.
Berry.
My God. But that's the thing. Halle Berry.
Patrick Stewart.
Oh, Ian McKellen. Toad. Yeah. It's
fantasies of this movie.
That's what's great about the Mystique character is that she is so seductive, but the femme fatale, just very capable. She's always on these covert missions, and that's what I really don't like about I don't know what you call them, the sequel franchise or whatever, but
prequels.
No, they're sequel. Well, they're sequels. They're prequels. They came
after, and they're prequels.
Yeah, right. Origins. Prequels. But not only does Jennifer Lawrence just suck, I just have nothing for Jennifer Lawrence, but they just rewrite Mystique to be the most important character, which if it was Rebecca Romaine would have been fine because she's so awesome and so I forget, I should have looked up how many hours it took every day to transform into Mystique because it was literally a daily grind. It's actors go and sit in makeup chairs just for regular work, just for just normal looking people, for over an hour. And for her, it was hours and hours a day to go in and out and in and out. And it took a lot of commitment from Rebecca Romaine to pull it off. And she looks so great. The look they come up with her, because she's not the naked blue lady in the comics. She has the white, there's that white uniform that she typically wears with a skull on it. That's very cool. But in this, they have this reimagining of her as this just naked blue lady, and it looks phenomenal. And just all the props in the world for Rebecca Romaine for giving the dedication for something that I think just still looks incredible every time she's on screen.
I do like that. I just imagine her being in the makeup chair and just all these other actors cycling in and out next to her of just Wolverine goes in for a quick second. Yeah. Just of Wolverine's in and out in 30 minutes. And then Toad's in there maybe for 45. And it's just she's just there all day.
Still there. And that's probably a reason why you saw more of the privileged whites in the other movies with Lawrence. She's I'm not sitting in that chair for that.
Literally, this is the thing, is that she didn't want to put in the work. And so they rewrote, as the movies went on, they rewrote her character to just constantly being just white Mystique, which is just such a betrayal of that character and what that character stands for and her cause.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any other anecdotes, notes, anyone to mention before we wrap up?
I'm really looking forward to rewatching. Again, I just watched them recently, but I'm really looking forward to rewatching X2 after this because it is so good. And there's so much I want to talk about that movie, just thinking about this one. But just an awesome setup. Also, really it's nice to have a movie that's just adults. Just adults.
Adults and Anna Paquin.
Adults and Anna Paquin. Again, worst part of the movie is the kid, as per usual. But they say all the adults characters, the casting adults, and that are all perfectly aged kind of together. Just great part.
Yeah, the lack of the origins. We just got this characters going into it. I thought that was the biggest thing I took away from this movie is that's kind of lost now. The movie theaters the studios like to hold our hands, through a lot of these characters and like, okay, we need to tell you everything so you can get this emotional investment or see where this character is coming from. Like, nope, you guys have read comics and known some of this stuff before, so just go in and start having fun watching this movie. Yeah, the ending was a little weak. I do remember just like the Statue of Liberty scene is just as how the fight plays out and things like that. That was I walked away with like, oh man, the beginning was so much better. But when I sit back and think about this movie, though, it's just some of those flash scenes of like Mystique and Wolverine fighting where she does that spin move as she's turning from, Wolverine into herself. There's like so many of those in the X-Men franchises that like just stick with you. Like I think another one is this when they're at the school and Cyclops is doing his powers and it's this camera going straight at Cyclops and he's like ching, 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 hitting a bunch of stuff. And then he shoots right at the camera. There's like so many good, like these character shots where they're like, oh, they just took like a frame of the comic books, and is like, okay, we're going to animate that frame, and I love it when movies like stay true to some of those scene for scene shots almost from the comic book. So, yeah, I had a great time watching that movie, and I can't wait to talk about X2 though.
X2, the movie that we've mentioned almost as much as the movie we're actually reviewing right now.
Exactly.
And that's Last Page.